what you thought about the whole concept of having professors and the implication that it's a one-way kind of communication. How important do you think it is that there be a back and forth?
Back and forth between professors and students?
Well, yeah, or the students and the students, yeah.
Yeah, students and students, that's already a bit accounted for, but professor and students, that gives the students so many opportunities, but isn't accounted for.
Welcome, and feel free to take the floor.
Alright, greetings. I am very excited to meet you at Summerhill Boarding School, one of the only democratic schools in the entire world. Now, the thing is, today I was actually pretty sick. I went to Mount Sinai Hospital, and when one of the doctors was treating me, he was asking what has been happening to you the past few days. And my throat was really full. I could barely pronounce D, P, and G, all of those strong words. And my nose is still pretty stuffy even right now. So I was pretty sick. And the doctor was surveying me. What have you been feeling the past few days? What have you been eating? What environment were you in? And the doctor was asking me. I heard he had this kind of English accent, and I asked him, where were you from? And he said Liverpool, because I was really hoping to be discharged from the hospital earlier. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to be here right now. I'd be sitting there in the hospital with real sick throat pain, and I'd be really sad that I wouldn't be able to be here. And I also spent hours, 4 or 5 hours writing the script. Oh, looks like we have some new members. But anyway, so he discharged me from the hospital, and when I was in the hospital bed, I was thinking, what will I start my speech with? He had this Liverpudlian accent, and he was a Liverpudlian, and so I was reminded of one of my personal heroes, Sir Ken Robinson, who was also a Liverpudlian. And Sir Ken Robinson, I thought I should start my speech with him. He thought of how schools are killing creativity in their boring education system. And I wanted to start the speech with the thought coming from him. And so once he thought of this classroom where the teacher was bored, and so they gave all the students this drawing assignment. And so draw anything on the back of your papers, anything you want. And there was this one little girl in the back, and she was drawing something really strange. And so the teacher saw that and came over to her and said, what are you drawing? And then the little girl said, I'm drawing God. And then the teacher said, but we don't know what God looks like because we haven't seen God. And then the little girl said, all of you may not know what God looks like, but you will know in a minute. And then the teacher walked away. And I think the moral of this story is you don't just tell a child stop. Rules didn't count for that because, their spark of creativity, you thought they couldn't come up with it, and thus your rules couldn't handle it. You can't just vanquish a child's creativity by saying, hey, you need to follow this strict rule, that strict it. And I am often a comment surfer, and so when I'm watching this video about math, that video about math, I see the comments, and I see lots of people saying I solve math problems ways that aren't the traditional way, and my teacher always screams at me. They make these kinds of memes out of it, and I think that meme actually has some purpose because it tells you some school systems see children with creativity that don't do things the way they were supposed to do it, but they still succeed, and then the teacher or the school system vanquishes that creativity in favor of what the curriculum is supposed to be. Now, I think that isn't something you should be doing when your children are having creativity, inspiration, things like that, whether you're homeschooling them or schooling them or anything like that. And so, the thing is, the idea of democratic education by itself, I think, started all the way back in the 1700s. when in 1693, it's close enough, you don't have to pester me. In 1693, this famous English philosopher guy named John Locke wrote this huge paragraph that was so fancy that I believe that not even Englishmen today can understand this kind of fanciness. I can't even read it, but I tried to translate it to my best ability. And for what I know, I think it says, basically, you should not push the task of learning onto another child. Otherwise, they will think, hey, I can just memorize these equations from the test and then throw them in the rubbish bin. All these equations and stuff, if you just push them on a child, hoping that they'll know what they need, instead of giving the child the opportunity, the time to discover it, and giving that child the actual right resources to discover it, the child will think, oh, all I need to do is memorize these equations. Then I can throw them away and continue on with life. But that's not how you learn. That's how you memorize, cram, stress, and forget. And so, I believe that that's not the way you should learn. And John Locke believed that too. And in the same paragraph, he made a deliberate connection to corporal punishment, which isn't that nice, so we won't mention it here. But anyway, much later in 1762, somebody named Jean-Jacques Rousseau, I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know that much French. So Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a French philosopher, wrote an entire book named Emile about an eponymously named imaginary pupil who was treated very well by his teacher. And when it came to math and science, the teacher asked her to discover math and science, use the tools and materials available in the classroom to actually find out what it means, what the equations mean, and use your creativity to possibly discover or infer something new that it wasn't intended in the curriculum but was still discovered anyway. The point is, you should only have a loose curriculum with hard points in the middle where experiments and ideas and things like that should be. But you should have a mostly loose curriculum so a child's creativity isn't hindered by whatever you wrote down in your lesson plan. So, the thing is, that's what Emile advocates for. And after that, in the 1800s or the 19th century, I always keep getting them confused because some people say the 1800s is 1800 to 1810, and I say the 1800s is 1800 to 1899, and it's all just so confusing. But anyway, in the 1800s, not really much happened. But somewhere in 1810, there was this Russian guy named Leo Tolstoy, I think, Leo Tolstoy, who made the school for peasants. Because you see, all those English and French philosophers were advocating for kids who had money in their pockets. But in Russia, they didn't have money in their pockets. They had lots of food and wanted the grapes in their pockets. The Russian Revolution happened for a reason, you know. So, the thing was, he had to make a school for peasants, and so he did. And this school was run democratically, and it had two key features that differed it from other Russian schools. One, you could choose not to come to school on Sundays, which Summerhill still shares. And number two, you can also not listen to the teacher, which makes things a bit rowdy, but it still works. I guess it's still democracy. But anyway, I think that this was the beginning of when democratic education really started to bloom. Nobody really knows what happened to that one school he set up, though. Anyway, in the 20th, I don't know if it's I think it's the 20th century or the 1900s, but that was when education, democratic education, really started to bloom. In 1912, there was this Polish guy named Janusz Korczak, I think, and this Polish guy set up an orphanage, which is not not really a school, but still democratic. It was run democratically, and he was actually a Jewish person, and the pupils were all Jewish. So, in 1940, you can guess what happened. They were moved to a Nazi ghetto, and 2 years later, Janusz Korczak and all the pupils that were currently in his orphanage were massacred. In 1942, Janusz Korczak and all the pupils currently in his orphanage were massacred in the Holocaust. But in 1921, this beautiful school, founded by Alexander Neil, was created with wonderful rules such as you can take lessons off, or you can choose whatever courses you like, or you can, attend the meetings as if you were a teacher. And so, students and teachers have equal vote, which means that students can pioneer their school the way they see fit. Students can also learn as their best person they can be. They can also learn independently. And I see that as an extremely good thing, because learning independently means that you have the ability to have a spark of creativity. You can adapt to your own schedule, and if there's something you don't like about the school, which honestly, as of right now, I don't see anything unlikable about the school. If you don't like something about the school, then you and your fellow students can probably pioneer a way to change it by going to a meeting or two and voting over the teachers. Because remember, students have the equal votes as teachers. So, the thing is, a lot of critics might say that this makes the school rowdy and children won't follow the rules, and somebody's probably going to get hurt in the middle. A lot of critics will probably say. However, the thing is, a democratic school is something that isn't trying to engineer sparks of violence. Bullying shouldn't be a thing, but it's trying to engineer sparks of creativity, trying to engineer a better learning system for us. Now, the thing is, a democratic learning system even worked out for me, because I was able to take a taste of many subjects that I had thought of, each one on my birthday. Now, it was kind of like a course a year, not exactly a course a day, but I'm not sure. Anyway, no one bothers, because on my second birthday, my father cleaned out my garage, completely cleaned it out, stuck up blackboards there, and rebranded it Room 0. And so, basically, now there was this empty garage with blackboards all over it. And my father put me in the garage and asked me to do a challenge. Now, the thing is, there was this book lying on the floor. And I saw on one of the blackboards there were some instructions saying, hey, you've got to find the title of the book and the author of the book. But by the way, right now, as you know, when I was 8, I moved from Bronx to Lynbrook. And so I no longer have that one Room 0, sadly. Well, somebody's probably stuffed it up with dirty cans of rotten food again. But anyway, that's what they all do to garages. So anyway, on my second birthday, my father put me in the garage and asked me to find the title and author of this book. And the book was lying on the floor. And you might be thinking, simple, right? Just look at the cover. But there was no cover. And then you might be thinking, simple, look at the spine. But there was no spine. There was a string. And so I thought, what am I supposed to do in order to solve this puzzle, this mystery? And then I thought, aha, just look at an image. And so, this image I found after flipping. And after flipping a lot of pages, I found this one image that signified gravity. And so, there was this cannon on top of a mountain, on top of the earth, and this cannon was shooting, this cannon was shooting cannonballs. And these cannonballs were launched at increasing velocity. So one fell to the ground, and Another went slightly farther and fell to the ground, and another went slightly farther and fell to the ground. But then one was suddenly ejected with so much force, so much velocity, that it went all the way up into inner Earth orbit and never came back. Of course, no cannons that we have today are so strong they can push an entire cannonball filled with gunpowder into orbit, but a man can dream, and Newton could dream too. And Newton dreamed of this kind of cannonball. And so how is this cannonball doing it? And more importantly, how is the moon doing it right now? And somewhere on the other side of the world, just lurking over probably India, Asia, Africa. It's probably night somewhere there right now. And so Sir Isaac Newton was thinking, how does the moon not fall? And that the answer was, he saw that the moon had so much velocity it wouldn't fall and surrender to gravity, but the gravity pulled just enough that the velocity wouldn't allow it to fly away. In fact, without gravity, we'd have no universe, because the first hydrogen and helium atoms were made by condensing of protons and electrons and atoms themselves. So we would have nothing except hydrogen, lonely hydrogen atoms floating in the air, and not for gravity. And God knows where gravity came from, because, well, it's just the natural law of the universe. But anyway, I realized that since it looked super fancy, it was in Latin, and there was this old-looking picture of gravity. I thought that the answer to this riddle must be Sir Isaac Newton. I had learned about him the year prior, and so I thought Sir Isaac Newton must be it, because the name, Sir Isaac Newton thought of gravity, it's old-timey, and it's in Latin. So those three clues combined for me to find whatever this was. But then I was a bit less creative for the second one. For the title, I was a bit less creative. I thought, all right, there is a cannonball in this picture, and the author is Newton. So, Newton plus cannonball equals Newton's cannonball. Now, the thing was, Newton's cannonball wasn't exactly the right thing to say, because Newton's cannonball wasn't the exact name. However, it was some pretty good reading comprehension for 2-year-old Soborno Isaac. So, give some claps, please. Anyway, no, you don't need to. I've already got some from 7 years ago. I look back on that day, and I was literally screaming and crying that day because I found out I got the title wrong. But that day, now looking back on that day, was pretty immature for me to scream and cry because I got something wrong. Because mistakes are not something that should be looked down upon. Mistakes are something that help you build up. And I know this probably had been said to you a billion times to you before. However, schools and things even say that to you, but they don't emphasize it. Because if you fail one test, you're going to fail the entire course. Because all of this stuff is really just about memory. This education system is broken. It was perfect for the 1800s, but it's broken for now. I will mention that later. But anyway, when I was on my second birthday, I learned something big. Not only that I fell in love with math and science, I loved the math and science from that day, but I also thought, hey, mistakes are just something for you to build up on. And even I myself made a mistake there. I said that the answer was Newton's cannonball, not Principia Mathematica, like it was supposed to be. But I still learned from my mistake, and I could grow from my mistake. And everybody can grow from their mistakes by learning what's wrong and what's right. So, that's what I learned from my second birthday. Now, I'm sorry for all of that. But on my third birthday, I learned now, on my third birthday, my father took me all the way to Greenwich Street, which is somewhere in Manhattan. I don't remember where it is in Manhattan, but it was next to the World Trade Center or 9/11 Memorial. And I call that Ground Zero as a nickname because of Room Zero. But recently, I learned in my history class that other people actually called it Ground Zero for the few weeks that happened before or after all the fallout of the horrible attack. I was nicknaming it Ground Zero. And so others who wanted to nickname it in honor of the people who died, and also just because of all of that fallout and smoke and all the crap going on there, they nicknamed it Ground Zero. And I nicknamed that too without knowing anything about it. But anyway, I didn't know of 9/11, but I did know that there was this big incident where there was this big glass building, and there were a few airplanes that just crashed into that building and made it fall over. And I had almost lost my uncle in that incident because my uncle, coming from my father's side of the family, my paternal uncle was working in the World Trade Center and during 2001, and so he experienced the fallout of the 9/11 attacks. So I was very deeply scared by that, and I had just learned that a few days ago. So apparently my father probably decided to theme my birthday after that. And so my father sent me to Ground Zero, or the WTC, or 9/11 Memorial. Now, at the 9/11 Memorial, I was sat at the memorial pool, and my father asked me, find the significance of this pool. And I thought, what is the significance? But and so I was looking around, and suddenly I saw this big glass building. And this glass building was the one that my uncle had talked to me about just a few days ago, about 9/11, and had that big glass building. But he hadn't exactly told me the name 9/11. I just probably forgotten it. I don't know. However, the thing was, after that, I thought I had almost lost my uncle in this incident, and my uncle told me thousands of other people died in this incident. And so I remembered, I saw these influence this kind of thing. I saw what this significance was. I had lost my uncle, and I had nearly lost my uncle, and thousands of other people had lost their family, their friends, things like that too, in this kind of horrible terrorist attack. And so I realized the significance of this, but I didn't exactly fall in love with anything. The same thing, sort of thing happened on the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and finally 7th birthday. 4th birthday, he put me in the middle of a mosque and gave me some chalk and told me to do something significant. So I wrote with the street chalk onto the floor, and I was like, done. I didn't draw a butterfly, nor a crocodile with a lizard tail, but I drew math equations. And so, well, one child who was previously sitting with his father's phone saw these equations, probably in the corner of his eye, and crawled over to me and whispered, "Hey, can you show me what all of this stuff means?" And then he was dragged away by his father, never to be seen again. And then another person came to see my math equation, but it was not a child. It was the imam. And he said, "Hey, you shouldn't be doing this kind of thing. You should be praying." Even though there were also hundreds of other people who were just playing and sitting on their phone. 99% of them being kids. And so I was thinking, why do you persecute my math and but let them play with phones and all of that stuff? But I decided to say, math is not bad. Math is good. It will help us advance in the future. and he was also in the head and I wasn't really listening to that, but I heard quite a bit of derogatory comments against, well, I heard a bit of derogatory comments against America and stuff like that. And I was thinking, why? Why are we engineering hate against other people, other cultures, other nations, things like that? Why can't we just engineer love? Because I know that the scientific community, lots of people respect each other, give lots of deep respect to each other. It's not like that in the religious community, just to say the least. People hate each other there. People absolutely despise each other there. And so...
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah?
Just wanted to tell you that we've run out of time, but it doesn't matter for us. Somebody might need to leave, but if you want to continue, we have more hour time.
No, I think it'll take about 5 minutes for me to finish.
Okay,
Sorry
perfect.
for the waste of time. But anyway, oh my goodness. I kind of regret this decision to come here regarding my stuffy nose, but on my 4th birthday, that's what happened. I even started up a campaign for math and science and to engineer love in the religious community. But unlike the scientific community, that won't be easy. And so to this day, I have written 2 supporting books, The Love and the Manies, which is coming out in just a few days. Before October 18, I assure you it will be out. We are designing the cover right now, sorry. But the thing is, on my 4th birthday, I didn't really fall in love with anything, but I learned of peace. The same thing happened for my 5th, 6th, and 7th birthdays. On my 5th birthday, basically, my father, on the eve of my 5th birthday, I saw my father just putting up some books on the bookshelf. And on my 5th birthday, my father asked me to read the Quran for 1 hour, and I had 6 hours. And it was pretty confusing until I realized that those other books he was putting up were a holy religious book, and they were all important to other people, other religions, and so I had recently been learning of all this terror and hate in the religious community. I mean, just look at it. And so I decided, why not respect other religions? Maybe that's the lesson my father is trying to teach me. And so I decided to read all the holy books and pick up all these holy symbols. And I thought, this is embracing others' culture. This is embracing others' values. This is embracing others' religion. And so I was really happy with this kind of puzzle. And so that's what happened on my 5th birthday. And on my 6th birthday, on my 5th birthday, I learned of religious apathy. Religion doesn't matter. On my 6th birthday, my father asked me to go to, My father asked me to go to one neighborhood, Beirut, and another neighborhood, Borough Park. And Beirut, I went to the Palestinian sector, and Borough Park, I went to Borough Park, because basically most of that town is Jewish. And so I was just dropped off to some random place, and so I basically just was asked to put some American flags anyway. And so I put one on the road, another on a road, another on a store, another on a road, and one final one that was on a front lawn. And so I thought, all right, let's do the same, but in Beirut. And when I came back to examine the 10 flags that I was given, 5 out of 5 were 0 out of 5 had been destroyed, and all 5 out of 5 had been kept in perfect definition, except one of them on the road, which had been drove over. But at Beirut, I saw that 4 out of 5 flags were destroyed, and one was either unnoticed or people just kept it there because people liked it. And so I realized, and so I thought on that day, why are people doing this? Maybe maybe it's just a hateful sector. And I realized that there is one hateful sector, probably in a bit of Beirut, that has ripped off all these flags. And I also realized that there is this one tiny small hateful section of Islam, which makes us want to fear Islam, makes us Islamophobic. But just one bit doesn't represent our entire culture or our entire religion. That's like saying quite a few people in the world are extremely racist. That all of humanity is racist. That's not true. So, I realized this kind of thing on my 6th birthday. And on my 7th birthday, which was my final birthday, on my 7th birthday, what happened was, I was asked to survey a few conversations. And I was going to report back to my father after 1 hour and to say what they were talking about and stuff like that. So I took out my bike from the trunk and I started biking around Beirut, and I saw all of these conversations, and most of them were in Arabic, but some of them were in English. And so I heard only a few, like 1 or 2, that were about taking the Gaza Strip, or taking or connecting back to Israel, invading Israel, being able to take back all the refugees from Palestine, and things like that. I only heard 1 or 2 conversations. However, I heard most of them were about those darn good shish kebab about some store or bakery across the street or 2. So I thought this is just further evidence that that some people are trying to act hateful towards others, just to misrepresent our entire religion, as this hateful sector that's talking about invading Israel is trying to make or misrepresent the rest of Beirut. And so that's all I learned. And I didn't exactly fall in love with anything other than math and science. And with my hidden passion, math and science, I just felt ready, suited for it. And so I realized that education and stuff like that, education is actually very important. And our education system has been failing ever since the 2000s began. Now, in the 1800s, you just gave students the requirements to become factory workers through 1 or 2 equations here and there to make sure your superintendent wouldn't scream at you without explaining any sort of context of the equation. That would be perfect for the 1800s, which is when it was made in 1837. However, for the 2000s, it is not perfect. Because those random equations you still learn actually have a purpose now. And it's not enough just to say them without any sort of context. And creativity, most importantly, is squandered by today's educational system. So, I feel that Summerhill, in one of our last hope, was sparking creativity in students. And I hope that all schools can one day follow the example of Summerhill, and not those crappy American Summerhill schools that confuse freedom with license, in the founder of Summerhill's words. But I think that the democratic education can truly work for everyone, if we don't have people who are hungry for money or people who are too lazy to change our education system. So, I would like to thank everybody who listened. And that actually only took 8 extra minutes.
Thank you so much. It is really brilliant to hear.
Thank you.
And I really liked how you took the historical context to the perspective.
Now, the thing is, has somebody in the audience counted how many times I've blown my nose?
It's a very good question. I would say 10.
I go to look back at the footage.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
No problem. So do you still have time for questions?
Well, I do, but what about you? Do you have any time?
we have like 20 minutes left until the next meeting.
Yeah, sure.
So we are happy to ask some questions for you.
Yeah, sure.
Great. I think Jerry's got his hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who wants to ask the first question?
I've enjoyed listening to you. There's a little girl who was born, 9 years ago, who grew up in my house. And she calls me every day and she tells me interesting things that she did, just like you've been telling us interesting things. And she's also obsessed with birthdays. She's already talking about what I'm going to get her for her birthday, and it's in December. I said, well, it's too early, But I was wondering what you thought about the whole concept of having professors and the implication that it's a one-way kind of communication. How important do you think it is that there be a back and forth?
Back and forth between professors and students?
Well, yeah, or the students and the students, yeah.
Yeah, students and students, that's already a bit accounted for. But professor and students, that gives the students so many opportunities, but isn't accounted for. Because if the professor would listen to the students who might be above the academic level can give them suggestions, and students below the academic level might ask them to include something more or include context for something that they normally wouldn't know if they didn't have any teacher-to-student kind of connection. I think that teacher-student connection is very important when you're talking about, things like socialization, things like that. I mean, when you need this kind of, if you have a more knowledgeable other, then it's always important to get others to learn, and students can give suggestions on how to improve your knowledge or improve your lesson, and they can even teach the teacher something. So there are a lot of things that can actually be included in a curriculum, and there's a lot of feedback students can give, and if the teacher who wasn't open to that feedback, then their lesson would be much, much worse. But the thing is, teachers should be open to feedback from students. I think that's very important when changing their lesson.
Thanks, Terry, for the question. Charlie?
Yeah. I'm really curious to know some of your thoughts on education. For example, what do you think are the most important pillars or factors of a meaningful or effective education?
Well, an effective education, first of all, you need a person who actually knows the ins and outs of the lesson. A person that actually knows the meanings behind what they're teaching and stuff like that, instead of just memorizing this equation, that equation, and all of that stuff. You need first of all, you need a teacher who knows their lesson. Second, you need to have hands-on demonstrations, especially when you're talking about math and science. Because otherwise, students just don't get the same sort of creativity out of it if they have an engineered website. Students can give their own sparks of creativity or test things on their own and try out things on their own if they're just given a static whiteboard or blackboard showing a diagram. You can't just modify a whiteboard and see what will happen. That only happens in real life. Whiteboards are just the places where you put ink, not places that are meant to simulate stuff. So I think that it should be very important for students. I think it should be very important for students to have hands-on materials and equipment and stuff like that. And so I think those are two basic pillars of education. The third one is democratic education, which I have already talked about extensively. But democratic education is extremely well and good. It's extremely good for others because it makes their schedule flexible and it allows them to pioneer the school way they see fit. So I think those are the three pillars of education.
Have you actually experienced democratic education? Have you been in a democratic school or even visited any?
I have not been schooled in a democratic education because I live in Lynbrook, and I live in Lynbrook in New York, and there's not many Democratic schools here. So I have never been schooled at a Democratic school, no. But I have definitely done some research into Democratic schools and Democratic education and stuff like that.
So you live in New York?
Yes.
Well, I'm on Long Island, but we helped start some Democratic schools in New York.
Wow.
There's one in Brooklyn called Brooklyn Free School, and there's one in Manhattan called Pono.
Ooh, I think I'm going to take the one in Manhattan. I actually go to a school in Malvern I actually go to two schools in Malvern. One of them is named Davison Elementary School, and another is named Howard T. Herbert Middle School. And so the thing is, I go to two schools at the same time, and I think it would be pretty hard to kind of change my curriculum. But I'll see what I can do about all of this and that, because I've skipped grades, and I'm not sure because I'm in 8th grade, and so when I graduate next year, I'll be in 9th grade and in high school. So I'm not sure if the Brooklyn Free School allows that or things like that. But I'm very excited to at least see or take a tour of these two Democratic schools. So I'm just going to make a mental note or try to know about it later, because I definitely need to Google the locations of that so I can take a tour or visit or something like that.
There's another one actually also in Manhattan called the Agile Learning Center, and so those are three that are very close to you that you could visit.
Oh, so can you tell me just any one of them so I can write it down?
You want me to put it in the text?
Yeah, sure.
I'll just tell you. So Brooklyn Free School is
Okay.
in Brooklyn.
I'll go for Brooklyn Free School.
And Pono is in Manhattan. They do a lot of outdoor stuff, a lot of hiking and going to farms and things like that.
Sounds fun.
Well, I ran a school like that for 17 years, and it was in Vermont, where it's quite cold. And the kids made a rule they could never be a snow day. That's how much they liked going to the school.
Wow. So I think that's proof of how democratic education is really strong. And yeah, I also live in Long Island too. So I live somewhere in the Lynbrook Malvern area. And so
I'm in Roslyn. You could visit sometime if you want.
All right. I've just got a Brooklyn Free School written here. I'm just gonna stick that on the wall.
Yeah, well, you know what? If you go to my website, my website is educationrevolution.org. Educationrevolution.org.
Got it.
You can write to me from there, and then I can email you some of this information. And if you go to educationrevolution.org, you can go to member schools, and you can see these schools in New York, for example, and their websites.
To contact me, I have an email, rb3408 at NYU capital.edu.
NYU what?
.edu.
Chat.
Edu.
I missed the first.
Got it. All right. I know. Lots of people forget easily. NYU.
I got most of it, but I missed the first three letters and the last. Is it .edu?
NYU, New York University, does it?
RB. Okay, I got it.
RB, yeah.
I'm curious to know, how's your experience working in the universities as such a young person?
So I have actually worked at a college, and you can Google my name.
I think you would have very interesting discussions with the education department at the university. I have one question, or actually kind of two. What is the biggest challenge or question that you think exists, and the one what is the most difficult question or challenge that you have faced?
I think that the biggest physical challenge is the theory of everything. I think that the biggest challenge is the theory of everything, because the theory of everything hasn't been figured out for millions and billions, for hundreds of years. People have been trying to take a grasp for one central defining thing, and I see three big leaps in math and science. The three big leaps. First was when Sir Isaac Newton discovered gravity, and that led to the Industrial Revolution. Second was when the Michael Faraday discovered electricity, and all the years later, it led to our digital revolution, where all of this electricity, this here, and this Mac that I'm using right now is a product of electricity, coming from Faraday's mind. And so that is the second thing. And the third big leap was Einstein, not only with his theory of relativity, but also with his with his discovering of how we can harness nuclear energy and solar energy, which is very important when we're talking about, renewable energy. And the Earth would have probably become a hot fireball years earlier if it wasn't for nuclear and solar energy, because global warming, can't see. But anyway, the fourth big leap, I believe, will be the theory of everything. And I want that leap to start with me. But nobody has done it for decades or centuries. So I believe that it would create a huge leap in technology and mankind. And so I think it's the biggest physical challenge, because it literally defines all of the universe. So I think it is the biggest physical challenge that exists to humans in the world.
Thanks. That's very good. Yeah.
Maybe
Terry?
I'll introduce you to that 9-year-old. She moved away from Long Island this year. She's living in Virginia now. But I mean, maybe you could talk to her or Skype with her or whatever. It'd be fun. She's her birthday. She'll be 10 in December. So, when are you going to be 10?
April.
April. So she's a little older than you are. Do you mind meeting older women?
Yeah. I'm fine.
So we are kind of running out of time. The next workshop is going to start in 4 minutes.
Yeah. It's fun.
But it was really, really nice to meet
Thank you.
And I hope we can meet another time. And if you can meet Terry, that would be wonderful. In person, he's a great guy.
Thank you.
It's
So
very nice I didn't know about you, and I'm very happy that I heard you speak, and maybe we'll connect sometime.
All right, thank you. See ya. Hopefully I can take a tour to England sometime. And maybe then I'll go take a trip to Leiston, England, and maybe take a tour of Summerhill. I'm really excited about this meeting, and I was really elated to meet you all, and I am really excited, because right now I'm planning a trip to South Africa, so I hope that sometime in the future I can go meet you guys, because Leiston, England seems like a nice place, and getting a tour of Summerhill or one of these nice schools seems very nice, so thank you.
thank you so much. I think you would love Summerhill.
Brazil.
It's a great place.
All right, I'll see ya.